Welcome to FailCraft, the podcast where we dive into the messy, real side of success and explore how setbacks become the stepping stones to growth and purpose. I'm your host, Ezekiel Iferia, and today's guest is Dylan Bost, the founder of SunnyHQ, a human-first WordPress hosting company. But before he built a business grounded in clarity, he spent over a decade running a creative agency that looked perfect on the surface while secretly draining the life out of him. He describes that time as being caught in a cycle of reactive work, a successful business that felt more like a trap than a triumph. He is here to share the breaking points that forced him to tear it all down and how he learned to build a company that supports his life instead of consuming it. So, Dylan, it's a pleasure to welcome you to FailCraft. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Ezekiel. Glad to be here.
All right, glad to have you here. So, let's dive in. Your story resonates because it highlights a very specific kind of failure, the success trap. So, you ran a creative agency for over a decade that looked great on paper, but you admitted that you were caught in a cycle of reactive work that actually drained your energy. So, can you take us back to specific moment or maybe a late night at the office or a difficult client call where you discovered, where you looked at your business and you looked at the business you had built and realized that it isn't working and you really don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Ezekiel. I think that I get asked this question a lot, and I think we read stories, we watch TV shows, and there seems to be always this kind of breakdown before the protagonist sees what's going on. And for me, it was really not. For me, it was, and I look at this, it's a story for me. And as I reflect back on a misalignment. And so, like you said, on paper, everything was fantastic, right? We had a beautiful staff, wonderful people. We had hundreds of clients, all the awards, making lots of money. And for me, um, I think as I got out of school and started this professional life, I was always doing, right? I was always moving. I was always distracted by, and especially when you're running a business, as I'm sure a lot of your listeners who run businesses can attest to, there's always a distraction. Whether maybe you're in the creative sense, but now you're managing people, you're doing the accounting, you're doing HR, you're managing sales, you're doing marketing, and maybe you love a lot of those things like I did. I thrived in those different environments. But the thing that I found is that it took me away from really understanding what I wanted and what was internal and what actually brought me joy. So they seemed like, because they were a distraction and I was optimizing, as we all are, right? We're optimizing our life. We're trying to squeeze every ounce of our energy out of the day, and we think that that's success. And on paper, it is success. But what it was doing internally, it was eroding parts of my soul in a lot of ways. And it seems like those two things are kind of out of accord, right? You would think that, oh well, success brings happiness, and it doesn't necessarily. And so I remember one particular afternoon, sunny afternoon, just literally standing in my office. Everything was going great, but having this, starting to hear this question of what is this for? And that's to me, it was an existential question, right? I started to really dive into that and think, well, at the end of the day, 10 years from now, no one will remember these beautiful logos or this advertising campaign or this website or these TV commercials. No one will remember these things. No one will even care. And when I started to digest that, it was really difficult for me to kind of make sense of that, because it's like, here are these things that are tremendously important. And granted, kind of passed it off in a way of saying, well, okay, well, what I do is the work that we do helps companies do really well, which in turn gives their employees salaries. And so I started to make sense of it that way. But for me, there was no long-term legacy. There was no long-term, give back to the world in a sense. And so that was really the moment that started the process. And unfortunately, I didn't really pay attention to that moment. And what it led to was a complete burnout. It led to drinking too much, which allowed me to ignore the issues. It didn't help that around 2008, of course, as all the listeners know, the troubles that we had in the US. And a big part of our client base just dissolved instantaneously and led to even more issues. And so all those things kind of, instead of me starting to not just ask those questions and then answer them and then move towards some form of resolution, I actually just kept doing the same thing. I don't recommend it to anyone.
All right, all right. So, Dylan, you mentioned that your previous work involved subjective deliverables, which is often a recipe for burnout. So, how hard was it to admit that the model was the problem rather than just, thinking you needed to work harder to fix it?
Yeah, it was easy to see, but not easy to do anything about, at
Mm,
the time. And so unfortunately it took me burning that down to say, okay, what worked from that? And so the difference, right, is with an agency of which, again, I want to say agencies are wonderful and I had a fantastic time. I learned a lot, but what what we didn't take steps to do is we didn't take the steps to say, okay, what are things that are reoccurring? What are repeatable events that we can charge customers for? What are things of value where we can stop working only for our time and build in devices and products and services that can live beyond the actual people? And I did do that when I looked at creating this new business. And the wonderful thing is, I said, I've done all the subjective, meaning, so in the design business, right? I'm going to design a project for you. That project has a $10,000 price tag. Well, that project might take 5 hours or it could take 500 hours, right? It just depends on when you think we get it right. Well, the business that I run today, the beautiful thing about it and WordPress management and hosting is your website either runs or it doesn't, right? It's either broken or not. There's no in between. And so it's a very objective thing. So we can optimize for that environment and do really, really well. And then the cool thing we do today is we just really increase the human side of it, the service side of it. So what that means is we're very hands-on with our customers and we find a lot of joy in fixing their problems because what I train my staff is the reality is, you know, it may be seen by some companies as a minor problem on a website, right? Is a minor problem. But what it really is, let's say a form doesn't work on the website, and let's say that form delivers leads to that company. Well, maybe that fix takes an hour. And so it's not seen necessarily as a big deal. But in reality, for anybody that has a website, it's a really big deal. It's kind of like if you're driving your car and you have a flat tire, that's not a hard thing to fix. But if you don't know how to fix it, you're stuck on the side of the road until someone comes along and helps you. And so that's what we do for businesses is we're really there to help plug all those gaps and make sure that things are running really optimally. And the real value to the businesses is they don't have to focus then on that side of their business at all. They can use those hours of time to focus 100% on selling their services and their products.
right, all right. So, Dylan, you now run a human first hosting company. So I'd like to know, was that philosophy born directly from feeling dehumanized by the grind of your previous agency?
You know, not so much. It was more taking the aspects of what worked really well in the agency
Mm-hmm.
and rolling that into what I see is at the time when we started the business and still today is a real gap in the marketplace, right? So you go out to a website host today and website hosting is by nature a technology service, right? I host this website, it's all ones and zeros, it's all levers that people pull. And some of it's automated, some of it isn't. But even the parts of it that are manual are typically seen as more machine-like, right? I need this thing fixed, you fix this thing. And what I saw that was really missing from I took about a year in developing the business where I literally did everything. So meaning I sold hosting customers and I managed all of it myself so that I could see where are all the touch points. Because what I found is when I was working with some of the larger hosts, if I had a problem and I went to them and asked them the question, their demand from their side, they needed to know very technically what was wrong. And I really, even though I knew, I played the role of my customer in this case, right? And so I didn't know what was wrong. It's like the website's broken. And so there's a lot of friction there, right? There's a lot of hurdles in essence to get the fix that was needed to make the website run. And so to me, what I said is, well, before in my high touch design business, why don't we introduce this high touch, concierge white glove feel into the hosting environment? And that's what we sell today, is really allowing our customers to come in and they say, look, I've got a yoga business, or I'm a doctor, a dentist, or I sell solid surfacing. That's what I do. I don't care about websites. I know I need mine to run, but I don't want to learn how to do it. And that's where we really come in. So I could introduce then the high touch feel. So we're very hands-on with our customers. For all of our customers, we know their website almost better than they do. And that's very unusual in the marketplace today. So it was really more taking the positive aspects of a service business that was a design agency and introducing that directly to a technology business.
So pivoting from a decade-long agency to a new model can be quite a risk. So, what was the loudest "what if I fail" fear that went through your head when you decided to shut the old door and open a new one?
Yeah, all the things that we feel, right? Who's going to want this? Why would they want it from me? Who do I think I am? These are, I think, very core questions that all of us ask, and honestly, some really, I think, foundational aspects to what I think is important for businesses to know. Develop your expertise, and then, this is something I learned. I was a Walt Disney Imagineer for a couple of years, and I learned this from Disney. The idea is that, and what I've learned over the years is honestly, we all don't know everything, right? And so it's okay. We don't have to go into every aspect of our business and assume that we know everything. What we do need to do to be successful, though, is to be willing to pivot and be willing to learn really quickly. If we're going to make a promise, then we need to fulfill the promise. So, you know, and every day for instance, there are thousands of WordPress plugins on the market today. All right. Every customer that we have, hundreds of customers, no two websites have the same plugins. And there's no way that our team can know every aspect of every plugin out there. But what we can do is promise that we'll figure it out really quickly. And so I think that's the key is that willingness to know that you don't know everything and to be comfortable in that place. But on the other side, to have the real motivation to go get it done, to think very clearly, to problem solve, and to make sure that you fulfill the promise to your customer.
All right. So, no, you are currently writing a book called The Seven Mirrors that explores how memory intersects with leadership. So, how does your memory of that previous burnout shape the way you lead your team at SunnyHQ today? So, do you lead differently because of those past scars?
Absolutely. I mean, 100%. I mean, it's all been, a giant classroom. And I think the one thing that I work hard or diligently every single day is recognizing where I failed, of being willing to acknowledge that and be willing to, teach those failures so that hopefully my staff doesn't go through those same things. A big part of the seven mirrors is looking at people and looking for I'm looking at different situations in our life and accepting the teaching that they have for us. I think, and I didn't come up with this, but I'm a big believer that the universe is there for us. It's not happening to us, right? And the minute that we quit looking outside ourselves and pointing fingers and saying, "Oh, well, it was him," or "it was because of that thing." So even in our own business today, right? If something fails and we had even if our team had a remote part in that, or maybe we think we should have seen it, we're the first ones to say, you know what? We should have seen that coming. We had that problem over here, or that was a mistake of ours, but we corrected it. And I think that goes a long way with our customers, to show, one, that we're human beings, but two, to show that, these things do happen every single day, and no team is perfect, but accepting responsibility and accountability for that and then making the shift is a huge part. So that's a big part of what I learned from that past business and how I instill that in all of our staff, being okay with everything not being okay all the time.
Great. So, Dylan, for the founder listening right now who is perhaps drowning in reactive work, checking emails at midnight, putting out fires, and feeling like a slave to their own creation. So, what's the first system or boundary they need to put in place today to get a sliver of their life back?
I go back to the basics every time with this. We discount our breathing a lot. I think that it's slowing your breath. Some very simple techniques in breath work and in meditation are hugely important. Something that I overlooked for literally years was that I looked at who I was as a person as very different from who I was as a professional. And you can't do that. I mean, you're the same person. And so, we have things that happen in our lives. We deal with things in our professional lives. And the thing that a lot of us forget is to simply do human things like move our bodies, right? Is to exercise our bodies, is to maintain our breath. I've stolen many things from even the Navy SEALs. When you look at, I read this. I've read this multiple times, but for instance, Navy SEALs have a box breath that they use. Now, I looked at it like I'm not a Navy SEAL, obviously, and my business isn't dealing with life and death, but I looked at it like if these guys are going to practice this in the highest stress environments, then think of what that can do for me. So something as very simple as when you're
Mm.
feeling overwhelmed and moving to a box breath, which is very simple, right? So you breathe into the count of 4, you hold it for 4, you breathe out for 4, and you just repeat that. And if you do that for, say, a minute, minute and a half, you'll find your nervous system will calm. And this is going to help with decision making. This is going to help with dealing with that client that calls. This is going to help with the orders that you missed and how to help your customer and how to help your employees do better next time so that you're not reactive in that same situation. There's a real key here. The difference between reaction and response is profound, right?
Mm.
I think in a lot of ways we're geared because of our biology and years of being chased by dinosaurs, right? Of we're in this fight or flight reactive sense. None of us make good decisions when we're in a reaction mode. And there's this beautiful difference between taking a moment. So many times, when I'm asked that hard question or I'm dealing with that employee that's going through something or dealing with the client situation, it's okay to take a minute, breathe in and breathe out before you respond. Someone told me this once that I love. If many times when we react, if you notice the second thing that you think, so and you can anyone can practice this, right? You can practice this by just challenging yourself with the hard question. The first thing you react with is never good, but 100% of the time, the second response you have is exactly the way that you would have liked to have responded the first time. And so the key there for that breath is to avoid the reaction, right? Is to get into that mode where, okay, I can distill down what you just asked me. I know what I really feel, and now I can answer the question. And that's what a response is versus a reaction.
All right. So, Dylan, I'd like to ask you a personal question. So, for you, after
Yeah.
moving from the chaos of agency life to the clarity of Sunny HQ, tell us what does being successful truly mean to you now?
Success means, success means really, truly enjoying every single day. Success means having more time with my family.
Mm.
Success means teaching my children, being there and supportive for my wife, being there and supportive for my parents. The rest comes. I have chosen this new business and then even in writing the book as if we point ourselves in a direction of being in alignment with what we really want, if you really do that soul searching and say, and write down on a piece of paper, irrelevant of money, right? If we just say, okay, these are the things that I want out of life, if you can marry that and choose to just work to that process, everything you do in your job, whether you pick up trash or whether you run a billion-dollar company, I argue you will do that extremely well and you will succeed in life. All the money that you desire will come because you're living in alignment with who you are and what you want.
Right. Thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
finally, for our listeners who want to go check out your 5 minutes WordPress speed audit or connect with SunnyHQ, or perhaps just connect with you or contact you. So, where's the best place for them to go to?
The best place is I've actually set up a web page. So just sunnyhq.io/podcast. And of course, SunnyHQ gets all the information about the company. But if you are specifically looking for some help with your website, go there. There's a free download that will give you some free information on how you can start to look at your website differently. But we're happy to help as well.
Great, Dylan. This has been such a refreshing conversation about reclaiming your time, and I really appreciate showing up to share so many great insights with us on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ezekiel.